There are 7.5 billion people in this world, driving over 1.5 billion vehicles. 363 million of those vehicles are commercial. These vehicles are transporting people, goods, and services that all do their part to keep the world in motion. From the most populous of places on Earth to the most remote places only accessible during the right conditions. It is not often that we realize how much everyone and everything is constantly in motion until it stops. When it stops, that is where we come in. To grab, pull, push, winch, hoist, jump, unstick, unlock, or just plain maneuver you out of the mess you found yourself in. Some would call us drivers, operators, first responders, or essential workers. But I like to think of us as heroes from the ditch.
Today's society seems to be challenged by certain truths. My life experiences have had the occasional collision with what is true and what is false. My adolescent summer days were spent playing in the woods, pretending to be Davy Crockett and hunting groundhogs. My memories are full of fun times that I had outdoors and learning to shoot firearms. Some kids are athletically gifted and they break windows with a fly ball. Not me. For this to become a factual memory from my youth, I had to shoot a window out from the inside and then lie about it. I passed by a window while making my way from the kitchen to my bedroom. I noticed something out of the ordinary right outside the living room window. A fat, furry groundhog was right outside the house. So I slowly backed away so as not to spook the creature who happened to be munching on Mom's tomato plants. I retrieved my Ruger 1022 from my closet and I chambered around as I walked back to the window. I took aim, all the while knowing that nobody would ever question a small hole in the window screen. I controlled my breathing. I laid the front sight on the critter, I leveled the rear sight with the front, and gently squeezed the trigger. Down goes another woodchuck, and crash goes the window. In a testament to my mother's ability to clean glass, I honestly thought that the window was open. Well, I vividly remember the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach the nanosecond that .22 caliber bullet went through the plate glass. I knew I'd done something so stupid, so inexcusable, and so wrong that only the best cover-up story would relieve that uncomfortable feeling in my gut. So I quickly put away the rifle. I ran to the basement and I started the lawnmower. I grabbed a pile of rocks and laid them in place of the deceased groundhog, and I chucked that woodchucker over the hedgerow. I began mowing the yard. I made several passes over that small pile of rocks, but I couldn't get a single one to exit the mower deck and land in the house, which would have left indisputable evidence that the broken window was a result of my selfless efforts to ensure that the yard remained neat and tidy. So I picked up a stone and laid it precisely where I calculated it would have landed if indeed this had been an innocent mishap. Well, once the cover-up had been executed, I was still wrestling uncomfortably with the truth. Well, that feeling got even more intense when it came time to explain to my father what I had done. Truth isn't always comfortable. Truth isn't just being in accord with fact and reality. There are things that industry, society, culture, and the law expect of us that don't come naturally or easily. These truths that we'll discuss today are positions that people automatically hold us accountable to and how we must deal with them. When a truth is in conflict with what we presume, what we practice, believe, or know, dealing with it can cause difficulty. I like to call these uncomfortable truths. Think along with me over the coming minutes about a few of these truths that I know that you're familiar with. At first, they might bring some discomfort, but after careful consideration, They'll open up opportunities for your growth and development in an industry that requires you to relate to others in their time of need. The first, you are responsible for your choices. Well, this truth begins the moment the phone rings. You're sitting at a desk, busy with paperwork, computer work, or maybe just goofing off, when the caller on the other end of the line says they are in need of assistance. Well, you're a lifelong tower, and you've seen a lot. You've spent your life in the ditch, but you know your limitations. More pressingly is the voice in your mind saying, don't say no. Don't say no. You have to say yes. The request is something that isn't within your primary scope of operations, and it is going to be tough. But what isn't in this line of work? You've spent your life overcoming the impossible tasks faced in towing and recovery. You've learned they just take a little longer. As the caller goes on, they explain the details of the job and how many other towing companies have turned them away. Well, this statement is the one that turns that little voice in your brain into a trumpeting siren. Now you must accept the job. Everyone else turned it down. I'm going to show them, you say to yourself, but almost audibly to the caller. You never completely committed, but regardless, you're headed to the job. As you drive there, you're thinking of the resources that you know you'll need to do the job safely, but you don't have them. You're thinking of the equipment that should be used to avoid unnecessary strains on your rig, but you don't have it. You're thinking of the legal requirements of pushing the limits of the law, but you shut that thought down quickly because ignorance is bliss. You begin thinking about how silly your competitor would look out there doing the same thing. And you know they'd break trucks, they'd break chains, and they'd break the bank, ultimately leaving the scene with their chin touching their chest. But not you. No, you're capable of anything because you're you. Well, then you arrive. It's not what you've been told on the phone. It in no way resembles what the caller stated to you. It's bigger, heavier, deeper, muddier, and farther away than what you were told. As a brief aside, do you ever wonder what caliber of tape measure or length of stride our customers use when estimating distance from the casualty to the roadway? That always baffled me. Well, looking back, you never truly said yes on the phone, but yet here you are. It's decision time. You're a WreckMaster, so what's the first thing you do? A survey, of course. So you walk around the scene, you pace off distances, you feel the texture of the ground beneath your feet. Every squish of the soil under your soles seems to whisper condemning words to the better judgment portion of your brain. You see the casualty and wonder, how in the world did a person in their right mind make it that far? I mean, the words of Ray Stevens come to mind when the illustrious potentate says to Coy, "Well, how'd you get that big motorcycle up there on the high dive?" As a result of insecurity and hesitancy, the calculation step of the scene discipline is overlooked. You go directly to explaining to the customer everything involved in recovering the casualty. The words coming out of your mouth are intended for the customer's benefit, but they are speaking more loudly to the stored bits of information in your brain that have no relevant experience through which to make the conversion into confidence. It is at this moment that you finally say yes. Yes to a recovery that you don't know exactly how to execute. One that will cause great stress on your truck and to the client's vehicle. The rigging will endure some outlandish forces and leave the scene weaker than it arrived. Well, the choice is yours, and you have made it. Now you and you alone are responsible for everything that happens next. In our roles as towing and recovery instructors, subject matter experts, if you will, we are often asked by consumers to give feedback on the performance of towing companies from around the world. It's difficult to listen to these complaints, to look at photos, and to give critical responses that don't place the tower that's in scrutiny in a bad light. It's easy to be critical from the vantage point of a telephone or a computer, I admit. But more often than not, I just sit there, shaking my head, wondering, what were they thinking? Then when I'm told that there was no accountability on the part of the towing company, whose errors obviously caused further damage to the vehicle or its environment, frustration and resentment settle within my heart. It's one thing to see a challenge and step to the plate to make a calculated plan for success and execute with confidence. And if error occurs, the responsible party owns their mistakes. It's a totally different ballgame when there is no plan, there is no experience, and there is no accountability in the end. The only demand is to be paid for making the situation worse. Sadly, this lack of accountability isn't just in the towing and recovery industry. We see examples of this character flaw all around us. Well, if this aggravates your sensibility, be a part of the change that you want to see. Never make excuses for your choices. Hold yourself accountable to your actions. Let each one of them be guided by your knowledge that is gained through training, and then couple that with experience, and confidence will follow. The next truth is the customer isn't always right, but that doesn't mean they're always wrong. Our job as towing and recovery professionals is to take what information we're given, determine what is needed, and then help the client come to the same conclusion. Many times, the client has made up their mind on exactly how your service is going to be performed. Maybe they've already read their owner's manual, and in just a few minutes have become experts in towing their car, and your approach isn't what they see in the book. Maybe they've done an internet search and watched YouTube videos on how to unlock their car, and when you pull out a wedge and airbag, they say you don't have the correct tools. Well, maybe they used to work for a towing company, hauling cars to the auto auction, and the time that it takes to install a proper tie-down isn't something they're willing to pay for. When the customer has an idea of what they think needs to happen, we need to take their expectations into account and attempt to make our version of the solution their idea. The expert towing and recovery operator will gather enough information to know what is going on and what is required to meet the client's expectations and address their concerns. You'll be missing out on an opportunity to deliver the highest quality service if you don't give the client the opportunity to tell you what their expectations are. Think about how a server at a restaurant takes a second to ask, "Have you ever dined with us before?" This is an opportunity for them to explain what you can expect during your experience at their restaurant and for you to ask questions. When checking into a hotel, it always makes me feel valued when the desk attendant offers a bottle of water for my room and asks if there's anything else they can provide to make my stay more comfortable. This enables me to let them know in advance what I expect and for them to share with me what they can offer. You see, I'm not a restaurateur or a hotel manager, but I am a frequent consumer of their service, so I have a general idea of what I want and what I need. The question becomes, do my requests and needs fall within the scope of what they can provide and what I can afford? Sometimes the client may have more knowledge than you of their vehicle or circumstance, but not the forces involved to accomplish the goal. Maybe they've made modifications to the automobile that will cause issues with a traditional approach to the task, so special tools or rigging may be required, things that they may not be familiar with. It may be possible that they are seeking the cheapest solution And your job is to explain how your expert services bring value to the job. Are the customer's opinions, concerns, and expectations valid? Of course they are. They may not be correct relative to the situation, but try to see the situation from their perspective. This is called empathy. Marry their concerns with what is professionally feasible and responsible. Humans are inherently creatures of habit. Therefore, we like routine. A phrase I like that is relevant to delivering our services is, systemize the routine and humanize the exceptions. When you've identified the customer's expectations and something within them doesn't match up to your routine, consider making an exception in order to empathize with the client. As long as your choice to humanize the exception doesn't cause harm to yourself, your customer, or their property, the environment, or your company's culture and values, the decision to be flexible, it shows that you care. You may earn a repeat customer by simply taking their input seriously and making your calculated approach to accomplishing the task seem like their idea. You won't know what those expectations are until you ask. A towing or recovery job is more easily managed when following the SEEN discipline. SEEN is an acronym representing the terms survey, calculate, explain, check the no's, and execute. A survey often begins with the dispatcher or call taker. It is recommended that during the opening dialogue with the customer that they be given the opportunity to verbalize what their expectations are. Simple questions like, have you done business with my company before? Or, are there any special instructions or considerations that you'd like me to relay to the towing operator? Once the call has been assigned and the operator is on scene with the client, the questions and opportunities for feedback should continue. The operator should approach the client with respect and empathy. Introduce yourself and confirm that you're with the correct client. I learned this one the hard way, but we'll save that for a future episode. Let the customer know that you're going to conduct a survey and get right back to them, but in the meantime, you'd like for them to think about anything that you can do to make this experience better for them. So now you're off to do your survey and make a calculation. Once you arrive back with the client, be prepared to explain your courses of action and also to listen to their feedback. The explain phase of the discipline allows the operator, as they're speaking to the client, hear themselves state something that seemed all well and good in their mind, but upon verbalizing it, a gap in the plan or a miscalculation may be revealed, and it gives an opportunity for client feedback. The E in SEEN needs to incorporate some flexibility for you as an empathetic professional to humanize some expectations. Your objectives and plan to achieve them aren't automatically lined up with the customer's. The customer's objectives aren't always attainable with the budget and resources that are available. In order for us to demonstrate empathy and provide for the client in their time of need, what would we have to sacrifice to humanize an exception? Imagine how you feel when you ask the boss for a different type of rigging for your truck, and you're shut down with the statement, "We don't use that stuff here." Have you ever asked for permission to try a new tactic and the response is, "We've always done it this way"? Now, empathize with the client who you tell, "We don't do it that way." Your only reason is because it isn't in your system. We've all dismissed the customer's wishes because our mindset at the time doesn't allow us to choose empathy. It is a choice, and you deserve to reap the benefits of greater client satisfaction when you choose a more thoughtful path that considers the client's needs and their expectations. The third and final uncomfortable truth is actions speak louder than words. A great deal of my time these days is spent speaking in front of groups of towers all around the nation. They hear me speak about resistance, safe towing practices, and more. And if you were to join me on a towing call at my business, you'd think a lot less of me if I didn't install primary securement devices on the towed casualty. You'd question my teaching if I didn't always attach safety chains. You'd never make the first resistance calculation if I just hooked and pulled until the winch stalled. Well, I've had other drivers in our industry say things like, "Casey stands out there with his notebook and calculator while we get in there quickly and start pulling." Well, I'm nowhere near the expert that I want to be, and I still have a lot to learn, but comments like that are convincing evidence supporting how I live the discipline. The opportunities provided by WreckMaster to me to share time and experience with others in this industry have produced some meaningful and irreplaceable relationships. I have frequent phone calls and text exchanges, social media chats, and face-to-face visits with some truly remarkable people that I call friends. Those relationships wouldn't have the depth and meaning if we didn't have a common goal. We challenge each other to stay within the working load limits of our rigging, to secure casualties in safer ways, and to think about things from a new perspective and always be someone you can count on. Living the discipline means more than just paying lip service to a training platform that began in 1991. It's committing to its culture and values that laid the foundation for what we know today as the pinnacle of towing and recovery training. The ability for someone today to see firsthand what you and I do for a living is like never before in our industry. Virtually everyone capable of holding a cell phone has a recording device at their fingertips. Even when we think that nobody's watching, most likely our actions are being recorded. I'll never forget a photo of me that popped up on the internet several years ago. I was at a railroad crossing in a small town that had a camera set up for railroad enthusiasts to watch a live stream of trains passing by. A still image from the video clearly showed me driving a wrecker towing a dump truck that had been wrecked, and the first comment beneath the photo was, "Where's your safety chains, Casey?" And this was not even a towing page. I was caught red-handed. My team has the freedom to question my direction anytime they feel like it goes against their training and best practices. This level of accountability makes us all better and preserves the integrity of the discipline we hold ourselves to. But if they continually see me cutting corners and skipping necessary steps, they'll interpret my actions as permission for them to do the same. I'm going to ask some challenging questions to those of you who refer to themselves as a WreckMaster. Listen to them and consider your answers the next time you execute on any choice that you've made. Consider what lessons you are teaching to those who are watching. Do your actions represent professionalism, or does it seem more like you've taken up towing and recovery as a hobby? Do you carry yourself and speak in a manner that fosters admiration and respect among your peers? Do you wear your uniform with pride and display company and association crests with honor? Do you have confidence that is guided by knowledge, training, and experience, or do you rely on design factors and brute strength of your trucks and rigging to get the job done? Remember, confidence is best when tempered with humility. Do you demonstrate safety in all aspects of your work and still remain focused on proficiency? Is concentrating solely on safety deferring the necessary attention from being an expert at your craft? Begin with the fundamentals. Master every aspect of your discipline, and I promise, safety will follow. Do you view this industry as a community, populated by colleagues and peers? Or do you see as adversaries or greedy competitors those in trucks that bear other names and color schemes? We should be grateful that this industry has enough demand to support so many great towing companies, and we should never speak ill of a fellow tower, because we know that they're doing the best they can with the tools that they have. Is integrity a word that can easily define your character? Can those who work with you or for you or use your service say that you are trustworthy and fair? Are you reliable and dependable after committing to doing something or being somewhere? Are your values incorruptible, allowing you to make people feel safe and comfortable when they're in your presence? Do you rely on knowledge gained from dependable sources? Is because I said so, or that's the way we've always done it, an answer that you reply to someone attempting to gain knowledge from you? Be grateful for opportunities to share your wealth of knowledge that has been imparted to you. It's the only thing that goes with you when you die. When we're responsible for our actions, when we consider the needs of those around us and hold true to the culture and values of our organizations, truth isn't so uncomfortable. It becomes a way of life. So, Dad, I know you're listening, and I know you're a fan of Paul Harvey. So now you know the rest of the story. Whew. I feel more comfortable already. For WreckMaster, I'm Casey Burrows. See you in the ditch.